The Good, the Bad, the Teskey returns, and I have a special 2013-2014 NBA season preview. And joining me was TV host from NBA TV, Jared Greenberg. We talk about all the biggest storylines coming up this season, and we have much more coming up on The Good, the Bad, the Teskey. And joining me now on The Good, the Bad, the Teskey is NBA TV host Jared Greenberg. And Jared, you must be excited to get the NBA season going. Have some big games on tonight, including the Chicago Bulls playing the Miami Heat. And this is going to be, I think, the biggest storyline all season long, is if Miami can go for the three-peat now with Derrick Rose back in the Eastern Conference. What are your thoughts on tonight's matchup and the Heat being able to three-peat this season?
Well, yeah, thanks for having me on. You know, it feels like the longest summer ever. This is one of the most anticipated NBA seasons ever, with all the different storylines, so many big names changing places. Yeah, obviously tonight to get it started with the Heat raising their banners and getting their championship rings with Derrick Rose coming back. I think tonight's going to be a phenomenal matchup. You just hope that the game matches the hype that's been built up. And I think, you know, Miami's chances of three-peating, there's only been a few franchises that have ever been able to do it in their history, so their odds are against them to begin with, and then you add all the talent, not just Derrick Rose coming back in Chicago, but I love what Indiana's done. I think Indiana right now has got to be your favorite to win a conference, at least in the regular season, and then, of course, what Brooklyn has done with adding two future Hall of Famers, and then adding to their bench as well. Arguably the deepest team of the NBA. So I think, the road certainly for Miami is tough, but when you have the best player in the world and maybe the greatest player to ever play this game, it certainly it will not be easy, but something that LeBron James is more than capable of taking care of.
Now, I do want to get to Indiana and Brooklyn in just a sec. But let's stay with this game. Let's stay with the Chicago Bulls. You've got Derrick Rose coming back from a torn ACL, and he faced a lot of heat. A lot of people last year thought he'd come back and play in the playoffs, but Rose wanted to fully recover, and judging by the preseason, although it is a small sample size, it looks like that was the right decision. What are your expectations for Derrick Rose and the Chicago Bulls this season?
Yeah, I think it's been a phenomenal preseason, and you're right. In hindsight, it looks like everybody who questioned him for not playing last year, they're the ones that should have their head examined, because maybe Rose did exactly what was right for him. I think the sky's the limit for Rose. I mean, he's added some muscle, some weight. He's done a tremendous job of rehabbing and get not only his knee better, but his game to a different level and another level than it was last year. So, you know, I think that we should have the expectations of a rookie. Of a guy who won an MVP award, won a Rookie of the Year award, and why not say that he can repeat that type of performance? Because if Chicago's going to get to that level again, they certainly need Rose to be that good.
Joining the Good, the Bad, the Teskey's NBA TV host, Jared Greenberg. Sticking with the East, Jared, let's talk about those Brooklyn Nets. Now, this could be, I think, the most interesting storyline all season long. You have the Nets going out, spending some money, making a blockbuster trade, going within the division, getting Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett. They join the fold, but they've also got Jason Kidd as their head coach, 1 year removed from playing with the New York Knicks. Can Brooklyn be a force in the East, or are they destined for another early exit out of the playoffs?
No, I think there's no chance that they have an early exit from the playoffs. I think that they absolutely have high expectations and will be able to fulfill them. I think everybody wants to talk about adding Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett to three starters who will already have all-star history in Brook Lopez, Joe Johnson, and Darren Williams. But to me, what people are forgetting about is their depth. It's unreal how they are 1 and 2 deep at every position. I mean, you could arguably say that their second unit would contend for the 8th spot in the East right now if you just took the bench players. They are so talented. They're diverse with what they do. They bring guys off the bench that do things that the starters don't do. There's two ways to look at Jason Kidd. There's one to say they're so talented that you or I could step in and coach this team to the playoffs. But then there's the other side of it, say, hey, there's a lot of talent and egos in that room. Maybe you need a guy with a little more experience to be able to, in late game situations and in clutch game situations, have a coach who's had major experience on the bench. But, the Nets are rolling with this, and it seems like it's gone well so far in the preseason. Everybody seems to like each other. The key for the Nets is just to play with Darren Williams. A, he's got to be healthy, and B, he's got to go back to being the point guard that he was in Utah for so many years. Be an all-star and a leader and a great distributor and hit those clutch shots and stay on the court.
Now, Jared, it is much documented with Darren Williams that he couldn't work with Jerry Sloan in Utah, and Jerry Sloan is a famous coach and definitely has a lot of pedigree. So can he work with Jason Kidd, and can Kidd bring the best out of Darren Williams, who for the most part had a down year last year?
Yeah, that's the hope. And, Darren apparently played hurt, had some injuries throughout the way, was never in great shape for whatever reason. I think that's the hope, that Jason Kidd is a Hall of Fame point guard, like you said, just a few months after retiring, and he will be the perfect mentor to be in Darren Williams' ear day in and day out. Remember, the two of them played together on the Olympic team a couple of years ago. They're very familiar with each other, and I think everybody in the NBA respects Jason Kidd as a player, and that gives him some sort of credibility. So hopefully the not being too far apart in age and knowing what Jason's accomplished, seeing it right across from him many times on the court, that he'll be able to, adapt to what Kidd demands of D. Will, and he'll be back to that all-star caliber point guard that the Nets absolutely need.
My guest is Jared Greenberg, host on NBA TV. And Jared, let's talk about the Pacers really quick. Now, the Pacers, for the last couple of years, they've been in some heated battles with the Miami Heat, and all of a sudden, they have a superstar in Paul George. How is Indiana going to do this season? Obviously, they've made some moves to tinker their roster, but they're not making as much noise as, say, Chicago and Brooklyn, with getting Rose back in Chicago, and obviously Brooklyn going out and getting Garnett and Pierce. Is Indiana still positioned well in the Eastern Conference to fly a little bit under the radar?
Yeah, I think that's a product of their market, number one. And number two, I think it's also, because you don't make as many moves or as many high-profile moves doesn't mean that you haven't positioned yourself to be great. I think the trend over the last several years of the NBA is that it takes a couple of years minimum for teams to gather that chemistry and take the next step. So you're taking a team that was essentially a couple of minutes away from going to the NBA Finals, and you've just made them stronger without really tinkering. All five starters stay the same for the Pacers, but then off the bench, you had a really solid backup point guard, which they desperately needed in the last several years, in C.J. Watson. And Watson had done wonders for the Nets last year, and the Bulls the year before, backing up Darren Williams and then Derrick Rose. You add a guy like Luis Scola, who's a tremendous performer, and Chris Copeland, who had a breakout rookie year last year for the Knicks. I think that there's a lot of good pieces. And then, obviously, the injury to Danny Granger is going to be the one big question mark. He's out for at least 3 weeks. But when Granger comes back, you're either bringing him off the bench, who was the leading scorer for this franchise 5 out of the last 6 years, or you're having Lance Stevenson come off the bench. And Lance had a career year last year with the Pacers, plus he's playing motivated because he's coming up to be a free agent this upcoming summer. So I think that the Pacers, behind the Nets, are the second deepest team in the league, and their starting rotation doesn't have to go through that chemistry transformation like these other teams will have to do. Of course, the Bulls have to get reacclimated to Derrick Rose, and Joakim Noah hasn't played most of the preseason. The Nets have to get acclimated with everybody they have. The Knicks have made some changes. Obviously, the Heat have stayed who they are with a couple of different pieces on the bench. But, to me, even go back to the Heat a couple of years ago, they made it to the NBA Finals with LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. They didn't win it. It takes that year for teams to gather that chemistry, and I think that's a huge advantage for the Pacers over everybody else in the Eastern Conference.
Now, shifting gears to the Western Conference, Jared, obviously Kobe Bryant is going to miss some serious time this year with an Achilles injury. If he does return this season, can he return to being the Kobe Bryant we're used to seeing?